Why, hello there, friends. My name's Emma. I'm the Bookish Princess. Happy May. We're on to a brand new month, which means it's time for a brand new reading video. I'm going to tell you about the books I've been reading in April, the books I'm planning to read in May, a little bit of a book haul because I did buy a few books this month. Let's get to it. In my last reading wrap-up video, I mentioned the book Perfume from Provence by Lady Winifred Fortescue. It's about this English woman, Lady Winifred, who moves to Provence and setting up her house there and getting along with the locals, and it's just such a charming book, such a beautiful picture of Provence, like really takes you there. I definitely got pulled in by Perfume from Provence, and of course I had to read a couple of Lady Winifred Fortescue's other books this month. After Perfume from Provence comes Sunset House and Trampled Lilies, and I read both of those this month. They're a little bit more somber in tone because of what's happening in her life, and then also because in Trampled Lilies, it's all about World War II, and it's actually incredibly dramatic to hear about her living in Provence, and first they're helping to supply the French army, and then of course as the Germans take over, she's trying to get out of France and she barely makes it out. There is one more book that I'm planning to read. It is Rue for Remembrance. I'll find the cover of that one and put it on the screen. That is actually a sort of memoir of her childhood and growing up. So I'm excited for that. That'll kind of fill you in on what happened in her life before Perfume from Provence. Then there's also a biography that somebody else wrote of her that I'm excited to read. It's called Escape to Provence by Maureen Emerson. I'm so excited to have discovered this series. I've been reading them on my Kindle and they're just so charming. I've also been reading quite a few physical books. This has been, I feel like, skulking around my reading wrap-up videos for a while because I've been meaning to get to it. It's Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. I have read this before, but I wanted to break in my new Penguin English Library edition, and I did finally get to it this month. I am so close. I'm like 20 pages away from finishing, and I've absolutely been loving it. So obviously this is the tale of a shipwrecked man. This was written in the 1600s, but I mean, I guess being shipwrecked is kind of the same no matter what era you're shipwrecked in, because I think for the most part it is really timeless. It's so cool to hear how he kind of builds a life for himself on the island. It's described with enough detail that it really pulls you in and kind of makes you feel like you're there, but it's not so much detail that you like tune out. I love the way they describe his like castle that he builds, and then he also builds like a country house, like, you know, out in the woods. How he finds food, how he relearns so many things like that he maybe didn't know how to do when he was back in civilization, like making bread or making like pottery, like making a bowl to hold things in. He remembers bits and pieces and then he kind of teaches himself the rest, and it's really cool where his ingenuity takes him. It is quite moralistic, and in that sense it reads more like a book of its time, but I thought it was actually really encouraging and really beautiful the way being stuck on the island really kind of connects Robinson Crusoe to his faith, and he comes to rely on God, and his relationship with God is so important and is really what helps to sustain him and give him hope as he's stuck on this island, you know, year after year after year. And the way he focuses on all the blessings that he does have, I think, is really inspiring. There were many reflections that I really liked, but one of them was how, like, you'll get these sort of secret hints, he calls them, from Providence, you know, from God, like essentially these little like coincidences or like these little nudges that seem to be directing you down some path, and you don't even know why, but later on you see exactly why, and it turns out that it's really good that you listen to that sort of quiet voice. It's a really good mix of like reflection and adventure and action. I'm so glad I revisited it. If you haven't checked out Robinson Crusoe, I would definitely recommend it. This next book is by one of my very favorite authors who I've talked about kind of a lot, Jane Austen. This is volume the first, In Her Own Hand. This is such a cool book. So this is Jane Austen's Juvenilia, the short stories she wrote when she was a teenager. But you can see it's actually scans of her physical book, and look at how they actually took the cover and tried to make it look as much like the actual cover of the book as possible. I think that's so cool. So you can page through, see her handwriting, her revisions, what she crossed out. I think the original copy of this is like in the Bodleian Library at Oxford. There is a volume the second and volume the third, which I have a feeling I'm also going to need to get. You'll hear about Jane Austen's juvenilia quite a bit, and there are lots of different collections of it. There are some works that are more well known than others. Love and Friendship is very well known. I've always been a little puzzled as to where all the juvenilia came from. Like, how did we get them? Are they in weird fragments? Like, are they in letters? Jane Austen actually collected all these stories and carefully wrote them out in 3 little notebooks, and she you know, titled them on the cover, volume the first, volume the second, and volume the third. So it's very cool to get an answer to that question, because I've always been like, so where is there a complete collection of Jane Austen's juvenilia? And I think if I get all 3 of these books, I probably would have the complete one. Really fun. I've been like trying to actually read them from her manuscript, which once you kind of get into the flow of it and you see how, look at how cool her D's are. Like, they have this whoosh back. Once you get into the flow of the handwriting, it's not quite as bad, although it can still be a challenge. But just, oh my gosh, so cool. And of course, her early works are so funny. They're very different from her, you know, more mature works, her 6 novels, but you can definitely see her sense of humor and her style starting to develop. So just have been loving this one. Another book I bought this month, but actually haven't quite started yet, is The Complete Stories by Flannery O'Connor. I have had my eye on this for so long, because just look at that peacock. It's so beautiful. I've read a couple of Flannery O'Connor short stories. I do have, I wonder if it's right here. No, I think it must be on the other bookshelf. I have her prayer journal, which I really like. Flannery O'Connor was a devout Catholic. Her short stories often deal with Catholicism as a scene. They're usually set in the South. They can be quite dark, but they can also be very funny, very enlightening, really deep. So I'm really excited to have this on my shelf and just to get to know Flannery O'Connor better. Here's my last book purchase. This is Demons by Fyodor Dostoevsky. The new translation by Richard Pivier and Larissa Volokhonsky. I think they're married. They've been doing lots of these kind of interesting new translations. My brother Porthos watches my bookish videos, so hi Porthos, and he recently was telling me about these 3 books, Demons. This is also sometimes translated as The Possessed. So he read The Possessed. He read Fathers and Sons by Turgenev. And then he also read What Is to Be Done by, I think, Chernevsky. And they were all written around the same time, kind of about similar issues. And Porthos was saying it was really interesting because it was like they were all in conversation with each other. I was very intrigued. It's been a little while since I read any Russian literature, so I thought it'd be fun to pick this up. I haven't read this one by Dostoevsky yet. I'm maybe 60 pages in. One of the paragraphs recently started with, and now we begin to come to something that's actually related to the plot. So it's like, oh, okay, good to know the first 60 pages weren't really. I have really been enjoying the notes at the back here, because Dostoevsky is constantly mentioning like other contemporaries in Russian literature and things from Russian history. So it's really great that you can kind of page back to the notes and hear, okay, who is this author he's talking about? Why did Stepan Tromovorovich just say to Varvara, oh dear, Varvara Petrovna, he says to her, oh, you Bismarck. So anyway, definitely looking forward to finishing it and discussing it with my brother. Yes, there is some Tolkien in this month's wrap-up. This month I read this short story. It's called Smith of Wotton Major, illustrated by Pauline Baynes. This is my dad's copy. It has some kind of cool illustrations, guys. This book, they travel to Fairyland, and there's an epic cake-making competition. Wait, should I show you the picture? Look at that. Oh my gosh. There they are. I thought it was really charming. You can also definitely see little elements that ended up in Lord of the Rings, which is so cool. I also this month read, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it was Mythopoeia? Something like that. It's a poem by J.R.R. Tolkien. I just read it online. And it's basically about the power of myth making. Hold on, I'll just real quick read you a quote because I copied out a whole bunch. I'm sure I'll put them in my blog post over on a Pinch Pixie Desk. So he's describing myth makers. Free captives undermining shadowy bars, digging the foreknown from experience, and panning the vein of spirit out of sense. Isn't that kind of great? Blessed are the men of Noah's race that build their little arks, though frail and poorly filled, and steer through winds contrary towards a wraith, a rumor of a harbor guessed by faith. Blessed are the legend makers with their rhyme of things nor found within recorded time. It is not they who have forgot the night. Too often people act like if you're optimistic, if you believe in happy endings, to put it really simplistically, that you must not know about the harder realities. You know, you must be seeing everything through rose-colored glasses and not like acknowledging how ugly the world can be. And I love how Tolkien calls it out. It is not the dreamers who have forgot the night. They're the ones who see the darkness but choose to believe in light, choose to still hold on to that hope, which is a lot more difficult, actually. Anyway, speaking of panning the vein of spirit out of sense, I've been reading Emily Dickinson's letters this month. Oh my gosh. I know I've mentioned this before, but if you're interested in Emily Dickinson but like can't really come at her poems, find her poems really difficult, I would highly recommend checking out her letters, because I definitely did not get the poems at first, but then when I read the letters, I felt like I had a much better understanding of her, and she just was much more relatable, because the letters still don't make a lot of sense sometimes, but they're kind of delightfully all over the place. It would be so fun to actually get letters from Emily Dickinson. I wish I could be sitting with the people when they receive them and like see them scratching their heads. So many little thoughts and vignettes, so beautifully expressed. I have pretty much something that I've underlined on like every single page, so I'll just read you one real quick. It's quite a fairy morning, and I often lay down my needle and build a castle in the air, which seriously impedes the sewing project. What if I pause a little longer and write a note to you? Who will be the wiser? I have known little of you since the October morning when our families went out driving, and you and I in the dining room decided to be distinguished. It's a great thing to be great, and you and I might tug for life and never accomplish it, but no one can stop our looking on. And you know some cannot sing, but the orchard is full of birds, and we all can listen. What if we learn ourselves someday? Who indeed knows? One last one, I promise. You speak of disillusion. That is one of the few subjects on which I am an infidel. Life is so strong a vision, not one of it shall fail. I absolutely love these. I saw a post on Instagram recently of somebody who had a whole bunch of these everyman library pocket poets, and they had them like stacked up like this, and the spine is actually really cool, and it definitely made me want to go buy more of the Everyman Pocket Poets. Anyway, I will link this down in the description along with all the other books I've mentioned in case you're interested. I mentioned this in my last reading wrap-up video, and then like the weeks of April were passing and I was realizing, oh, I haven't picked that up yet. I said I would. I should. So my booktube video held me to my reading plans. This is Shakespeare's sonnets. I did not get all the way through it, but I really enjoyed just paging through. They're so short that it's actually really easy to just pick it up, read a couple. And it is cool to read them in sequence because some of them are like replying to each other. Of course, Shakespeare is always full of quotable lines. If I'm ever writing a book and I can't think of a title, I should just keep reading Shakespeare until I come across some phrase that like would be a great title. Or in fact, just read through and like copy out the best phrases and then write a book around that phrase. The phrasing is just so pithy and interesting. I was actually keeping a list of some of my favorites. He mentioned unthrifty loveliness, beauty o'ersnowed and bareness everywhere. Nor can I fortune to brief minutes tell, pointed to each his thunder, rain and wind. That one would be a little too long for a title, but I still think it's a cool thought. Anyway, those are my books for the month of April. I'd love to hear what you guys have been reading. Definitely leave me some suggestions of new books to check out down in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a like. Make sure you're subscribed. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Until then, have a magical and a bookish day. Bye.